Greetings and blessings, whenever and wherever, my brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow survivors of suicide, loss, and attempt. I am Brandy Johnson, ordained minister and fellow survivor. I want to begin, as always, with thanking everybody who is tuning in, because doing new things like this takes a lot of courage, and it means a lot to have your support, whether or not you've been directly affected by suicide. Because knowing that these efforts are supported by a caring community makes a huge difference in continuing the fight to break the stigma and to openly talk about suicide. Well, the month of May is coming to a close, and as most of us know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. But that does not mean that mental health awareness should end at the end of the month. This is something that we should be aware of and work to break the stigma against every single day. In many ways, this is done by acknowledging someone who is expressing or behaving in a way that signifies they may be suffering from a mental health issue. I am not an official psychologist, but I can tell you, as a minister and as a human, being able to have open conversations without worrying about judgment and stigma is the number one way that we not only continue bringing awareness, but we live out that awareness. People not only need to know about mental health, but they also need to know that we are open when they need to talk. I think one of the biggest factors, other than navigating the healthcare system, but one of the hardest factors about navigating mental health is finding the right person to talk to. And many times we need someone to talk to. We need to talk to someone who is close to us. But often we also need to speak to someone outside, and we need to seek outside help from a professional. Generally, that may be encouraged by opening up to someone who is close to us and being supported by that individual or that group of people who are close to us. So today, I just want to ask for anybody out there that's listening to please let other people know that you are open to talking to them, even if you don't have all the answers or solutions, because nobody does. You need to let them know that you'll be there to support them while they navigate the way. And always remember that there is help for both types of situations, whether you are the one needing and seeking support or you are seeking to support someone else. And I cannot stress this enough. The 988 Lifeline helps with crisis care. This includes helping others outside of the individual who may be in a crisis or needing assistance. And if you're concerned about someone, there are a couple of other additional numbers that you can also call. First, of course, like I mentioned, you can call 988, but you can also call the National Suicide Crisis Hotline at 1-800-273-8255, TALK. And this is if you know somebody also who is suffering from substance abuse. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Alliance can be contacted at 1-800-662-4573. HELP. There is also 741-741 text to talk. And these are just a few to start with. There are many more that focus on veterans, LGBTQ, felon in prison reentry services, among the many other causes that contribute to mental health and or suicide. So there are many organizations and options for help that you can reach out to, whether or not you need support or you're seeking to support someone else. And just be sure today, guys, that whenever and wherever someone may be displaying that they're having a mental health issue, just let them know, hey, I'm here if you need to talk. I won't judge you. And help them break that stigma that surrounds the darkness that they're stuck in, you guys. But I also think that we need to understand exactly what mental health is. We talk about this a lot. We've even mentioned, of course, that mental health is just as important as our physical health. And we know our body is controlled by our mind, and our mind is controlled by our brain. And the CDC has defined some mental health basics on their website. So I'm going to share and quote a few from their website. They define mental health as including our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. And that's from the cdc.gov, their page titled About Mental Health. I will include that link in the description or the comment section. But I also want to share a few facts about mental health from the same cdc.gov website. So it says, we have more than 1 in 5 U.S. adults who live with a mental illness. 1 in 5 youths, meaning ages 13 to 18, either currently or at some point during their life, have had a seriously debilitating mental illness. And I want to add on a side note that the AFSP has shared information that says children as young as 10 years old have died by suicide. So I think that those statistics are probably hard to populate on this. They've also kind of crossed over each other. But we can see that children as young as 10 years old also suffer from mental health issues. And those issues may include the statistics from the 1 in 5 youths between the ages of 13 to 18 that at some point during their life have also suffered from a mental health illness. So when we see these statistics crossing over each other, we might be safe to say that some of the totals here might have been included in there. But it just brings awareness to the fact that our young children, 13 to 18, and even younger, 10 years old, have suffered from a mental health issue. But about 1 in 25 U.S. adults live with a serious mental illness, such as schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, or major depression. And that, again, is from the cdc.gov. But it does not include everything. Mental illness can range anywhere from anxiety to a neurological, physical debilitation that causes poor mental health. It needs to be constantly managed through cognitive behavioral therapies and even medication. But other types of mental health issues include borderline personality disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorders, paranoia, psychosis, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other types of behavioral and emotional disorders, including in children, even personality disorders that cannot be managed or medicated effectively without constant monitoring and treatment. I'd also like to mention that Alzheimer's and dementia are also mental health disorders commonly affecting the elderly, but in some cases can be onset early. So we see that mental health can affect us at any point in time in our life, from adolescent and childhood to late adult and all that's in between. But recently in school, I studied lifespan psychology. And one of the first things they taught us about was our attachment styles with others. It is important because our attachments and our group identity are linked to our hierarchy of needs, starting with food and shelter and then group unity, such as in our family unit, in order to elevate our self-esteem and eventual personal transcendence. And attachment styles can begin at birth. Attachment styles is also part of how our mental health develops. And again, our attachment styles, it starts with our mother, our parents, and our family life as babies and children, depending on our caregivers to care for all of our needs. helps us to begin forming an attachment with that person that can either be healthy or unhealthy, depending on how our needs are fulfilled. But in many cases, a child that is well attached is more likely to have better mental health and even physical health later in life. Whereas children who do not develop a consistent attachment style, or whose attachment style changes throughout their lifespan, may have a higher ACE score, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And the CDC.gov website also has a page about ACEs and Adverse Childhood Experiences. It lists a few key points, and it tells us that a higher ACE score can have a long-term impact on health, opportunity, and well-being. It is also common in some groups, meaning sociocultural groups, experience it more than others. Additionally, adverse childhood experiences, and I quote, are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood. And some of those examples include experiencing or witnessing violence, experiencing abuse or neglect, having a family member attempt or die by suicide. And some of the aspects also included in the child's environment can undermine their sense of safety and stability. And again, I was quoting from the CDC.gov website, but these aspects of these environments can also include substance abuse, mental health problems, instability from parental separation, instability from household members being in jail or prison, or a combination of both. And this affects how a child's attachment style develops, which again, remember as I was saying, if these attachment styles are unhealthy and these ACE scores are high, can cause not only mental health issues, but physical issues later in life. And the CDC says again that this was not a complete list, but these other traumatic experiences can impact their health and well-being. And it may be things like not having enough food to eat. Food insecurity is a huge problem in the world, in our country, in our state, and even in the city I live in Kansas City. But being homeless contributes to that environment, or being unstable in housing, and even experiencing discrimination can contribute to a poor environment and a child developing poor mental health through unhealthy attachment styles due to these traumatic childhood experiences. So it's very important not only to be educated about mental health, but to create these stable environments that promote good mental health for everyone and also for children as they are growing in order to hopefully prevent poor mental health and physical health in the future. And as I said in regards to the ACE score, these adverse childhood experiences can be scored through basically a questionnaire that calculates the ACE against the resiliency. So the ACE scores would help us to understand what our potential is for physical and mental health taking a decline in the future. ACE scores affect our mental health and can be affected by how we develop and attach to others in our intermediate family groups from birth through adolescence and beyond. So understanding what mental health is and how our mental health develops, and also understanding trauma, resiliency, the ACE scores, helps us to get a better picture at what problems we may potentially face mentally and physically. So again, it's important to be educated and to be aware about mental health factors that contribute to whether or not we have stable mental health and or even physical health. But I also wanted to share from the Trauma Informed Oregon website. They have an ACE score calculator available, and I'll also try to include that in the description or comments if you want to take the ACE test. But it says the rougher your childhood, the higher your score is likely to be, and the higher your risk for later problems. And it specifies health problems because, as I learned again in lifespan psychology, our mental health can affect our physical health later in life or even now. But our mental health can also get worse if we don't pay attention to how we are feeling and acting and behaving, or how our children and other people around us are also feeling, acting, or behaving. It is very important not just to only practice our own good mental health, but to be aware of the mental health of others, because you never know when you might be the only person that notices or has a chance to step in and break that cycle for that person. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen every time, but if more of us become aware and, again, help to break the stigma by talking about it, by sharing information, by educating others, then we are showing those who are in crisis there are people out here who will listen. There are people who care, and there are people who understand. Because even if we haven't been in the exact same situation, maybe we have suffered from poor mental health, and maybe we've been through grief, maybe we've been through trauma, but we want to let them know that they are not alone in this. I also wanted to share something from the National Institute of Mental Health about stress and anxiety. As I have learned, anxiety is the number one mental health disorder that many of us probably suffer from. And sometimes it can be hard to tell if we're stressed out, if we have anxiety, or both. And when we feel overwhelmed, there are ways that we can cope. So the National Institute on Mental Health says that life can be stressful. We know that everyone feels stressed from time to time. Stress is a physical or mental response to an external cause. And a stressor may happen one time. It could happen repeatedly. It could be short or long term. But anxiety is the body's reaction to stress and can even happen if there's no potential threat at that moment. And that was quoting from the National Institute on Mental Health. They have also said that, when these feelings, when this anxiety and stress does not go away, it can also affect your health long term. Stress and long-term anxiety, and my apologies, long-term stress and long-term anxiety, have a debilitating effect on our physical as well as our mental health, you guys. You can also be at risk for developing mental illness such as an anxiety disorder or depression from being exposed to long-term stress and anxiety. But you can also go to NIMH.nih.gov/anxiety to learn more about this. And I will again share these links in the description and comments. But we also want to look a little deeper into stress and anxiety. NIMH says that because stress can be triggered by an argument or something happening at school or work, and it is anything outside of our bodies that causes us to respond mentally or physically, generally in a negative way. So stress is caused by an external factor. And stress can be triggered by an argument or many different things, but it should usually go away once the situation is over or has been resolved. And again, it can be positive or negative stress. The NIMH says that stress can inspire you to meet a deadline, or it might cause you to lose sleep, for example. And that's like when we say, oh, we work better under pressure. Well, that might sound like a positive response to stress, but we also have to recognize it for what it is, because it can cause anxiety. And anxiety usually involves a persistent feeling of apprehension or dread, and it doesn't go away. The NIMH says it interferes with how you live your life, and it's constant, even if there's no immediate threat. And remember, anxiety is internal. It's your reaction to stress. And from what I understand, there's a difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack. So just to clarify, anxiety itself does not go away. Then you're left with that constant feeling of apprehensiveness or even a dreadful feeling. But a panic attack, generally it will de-escalate. So if you feel like you're having a constant panic attack, maybe it's anxiety and it's not going away. You may be having an anxiety attack that can last for days. They could be triggered by stress. And now this is not intended to be like a full diagnostic, medical exhaustive explanation. I'm a regular person just like everybody else, you guys, and these are things that I have learned along the way. Recently, I had to distinguish between a panic attack and an anxiety attack. And so I went out and I did a little research on my own, but I've attempted to educate myself. I do study psychology as my minor next to ministry, but these are things that God has placed on my heart to share with you. So if you're feeling that way today, I do hope this helps to kind of clarify what you might be going through. And definitely make sure if you have any questions that you reach out. You can ask me. We can look for the answer together. Let me know. I'll do my best to share what I find. And what I have found is from the NIMH that it is very important to manage your stress. It could cause you to avoid doing things, and basically it just interferes with your life. I mean, I'm agoraphobic, so I avoid situations that could cause me anxiety. I realized that as a minister, this would keep me from being able to work face-to-face with people. So I began to look for what the root of my problem was and to talk about it. And I do enjoy getting out of the house, but I'm still pretty particular about the situations I put myself in. So I encourage you today to start working towards better mental health and to learn how to cope with stress or anxiety if you're suffering from it. I am doing the same. And happy to say that I'm not a hermit. And my apologies, I don't mean to offend anybody who may be, if you are suffering from that, and I totally understand where you may be coming from. And for me, it was something that developed slowly. It started with not wanting to drive through traffic and only staying in my comfort zone. And it took me a while to realize that my behavior and my actions were displaying poor mental health. And I had to seek out and understand what is going on with me. Why do I feel this way? What's hindering me? And the one thing that I don't want it to stop me from doing is what I'm doing right now. Getting these messages out, sharing with people, educating, and bringing awareness for the cause that we have taken on. And there are many of those. But guys, a lot of this I had quoted from other sources. So again, educate yourselves and don't ever hesitate to reach out and talk to someone. We want to learn what causes these triggers. We want to learn what causes our stress and anxiety, and we also want to learn about some coping techniques. Once we've identified the roots of our problems, then we have to put together a strategic plan to work these problems out. But to reduce anxiety and to improve your daily life is the goal that the NIMH has laid out here. And they've also given us some activities that we can try when we feel overwhelmed. We can keep a journal. You could even download an app for relaxation exercises, deep breathing or visualization if you're into that kind of stuff. Tips for practicing mindfulness. And it says that this is a psychological process of actively paying attention to the present moment. And I know a lot of us can always seem to be there, but maybe we're distracted, we're overwhelmed by our stress and just waiting to get home or away from the situation that is giving us anxiety. So we have to make sure that we do things to promote our mental health. And some of these things could be to reduce that stress and anxiety, like exercise, get a good sleep routine, don't drink a lot of caffeine like soft drinks and coffee. And I'm going to be honest and admit this here. I'm an avid coffee and Coca-Cola drinker. I drink way more sugar than I probably need to every day. And sugar itself can cause many mental and physical health problems. So we need to identify and challenge, our negative and unhelpful thoughts, but we also need to care for our bodies as well as our minds. And I was once taught by a counselor, when it comes to these negative thoughts that may increase our stress or our anxiety, is to think backwards about the thought that I was thinking before I had the thought that made me anxious. And I found a lot of times that had worked for me. And I also do suffer from ADHD as well as what I call grief brain. So sometimes I have trouble focusing, I skip tracks, and I've learned that if I go back to the thought that I had previously, I can help understand a little bit of why my brain may have jumped over to another random unpleasant thought, and then I redirect my thinking in a positive manner. That, again, helps me to identify and challenge that negative way of thinking. And I can't stress this enough, you guys, because when it comes to our minds and our thoughts and how we're feeling overwhelmed, if we're not keeping a journal or we're not using apps for relaxation, then we still have to continue finding ways to retrain our brain in this positive manner and to be able to help ourselves reduce that overwhelming feeling of stress and anxiety. We can also, take a look at your schedule, rearrange it. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't take on more than what you feel like you can physically handle. Maybe we feel guilty, we feel obligated, and at some point in time, it's okay to say, for my own mental health, I have to reduce this stress. I have to reduce this anxiety. And for myself as a minister, faith in God helps me to do this more than what I ever thought I could on my own. And I'll probably put out a ministry podcast because I personally would like to explain and teach and show how we integrate psychology and theology for a holistic perspective on our mental health. But we'll do that separately from this podcast. Today I just want to stick to the science and the psychology, but I also want to remind us as compassionate, empathetic human beings, this shows us that we have a good higher power that has created us to care for one another. So be on the lookout for the other podcast in the future. But for now, another way to recognize if you need more help is to remember that when those feelings won't go away, it's time to talk to someone. Talk to a professional. You can ask about psychotherapy possibly. And it's also called talk therapy. And remember, in the beginning, again, I'm saying that we need to be able to be open, to be able to talk about things with our loved ones, with our family, with our friends. But we also need to understand, when it's time to seek further guidance, whether that guidance is from our church, our minister, our priest, our preacher, our reverend, or we need to seek out a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And this talk therapy can work in combination with medication or without, but psychotherapy and medication are the two main treatments for anxiety. And a lot of people benefit. Some even benefit from both. And again, this is from the National Institute on Mental Health. They are recommending psychotherapy and or possibly medication for anxiety, but it has got to start with talking. You can't even get to the medication part if you don't say something and seek out help and seek out treatment if it is further needed. And again, the National Institute on Mental Health also encourages people to call 988 or to reach out to National Institute of Mental Health directly. They can also provide resources for anxiety, mental health in adolescence, mental health in regards to talking to healthcare providers. And of course, they recommend the CDC website as well. So we see a lot of these organizations, they are in unity. They are all saying the same thing. They're all supporting each other in order to support those who are needing help and in crisis. So you can reach out to any one of them and receive the resources that can help you navigate and promote better mental health. But guys, again, I'm going to go ahead and include links in our descriptions. Please be sure to check these out. Read for yourself. Reach out to someone if you are needing help. But I am going to wrap this up soon because I would like to get another episode out here at the beginning of the coming month of June. And it is coming quickly. But if you take anything away from this podcast, please let it be that mental health awareness and good mental health practices do not end just because the month of May is coming to a close. This is something that we need to consistently continue in our daily lives year round. The month of May is just one of our opportunities to share above and beyond what we might do normally. But again, we need to remember that mental health awareness, just like awareness for many other causes, for suicide, for substance abuse, even for the message and gospel of the Word of God as a Christian and a believer, but also as a human being with compassion and empathy, mental health awareness is very important. And it helps to break that stigma. We hear this all the time, guys. But stigma still surrounds many people and many, many topics that fall under mental health, including suicide. And if we want to get to the root of our problem, we need to continue bringing awareness and education without fear or hesitation. And remember, even the littlest gestures make a big difference. You can reach out to someone privately. You can just say, hey, how are you doing today? I noticed you weren't feeling like yourself. You can even support mental health by wearing t-shirts or apparel like the Dear Person Behind Me t-shirt, for example. Or if you've seen my videos, I do wear my purple and blue ribbon next to my cross and my organ donor ribbon. But my organ donor ribbon is blue, it's green. And it also doubles for mental health awareness. So I really can't tell you how many conversations have been started because I'm wearing a ribbon or a t-shirt, and even the decals on the back of my Jeep help start conversations. And often I find that people just begin to open up. Everybody needs a friend. Everybody needs someone to talk to. So be that friend today. Be that person that is willing to have a real conversation. Be that shoulder to lean on. Be the ear to listen. But also remember to watch for the signs and signals. And even if somebody doesn't say something, just check on your family, your friends, and your loved ones. And don't forget, check on your boss, your coworkers, anybody you might encounter at church, school, the doctor's office. Those little conversations can really help turn someone's day around, and also let them know that there are people out there who care. And guys, we want to be the light and the hope so that others don't have to be left in the darkness. Let's talk it away. And let's be sure to leave a light on, because we do not want another light to go out. And if anybody out there has not gotten a 988 Lifeline yard sign in the Kansas City area, please let me know. I do have a few extras left over, and I would love to plant one in your yard or arrange to drop one off to you. It's another way that we can be the light and we can show other people that there is hope. And so thank you very much, guys, for listening as always. Please be sure to practice good mental health and that you reach out to someone if you are in crisis or you know someone who is. And thank you again, as always, for listening, for sharing and supporting this podcast. By doing so, I pray that you have made a difference. And I know it makes a difference to me. And I hope it does to you as well. And I hope to make a difference in breaking the stigma that surrounds suicide by continuing to openly talk about it. Again, I want to encourage you, if you're in crisis, to reach out to someone today, to contact 988 or the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. You can also contact 741-741 text to talk, but be sure that you talk to someone about it today. Be sure to reach out. And if you have a story out there that you would like to share, I would like to help you do that. Please let me know and reach out to me, and we can schedule a time to talk. But also, if you are in crisis, feel free to reach out to me, because I do have time to talk. And even if you have someone to talk to, just make sure that you are reaching out. And I can't stress that enough. But again, I can't stress it enough either. I always really appreciate each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. So please take care of yourselves. Don't forget to talk to someone if you're in crisis. And until next time, as always, guys, whenever and wherever, God bless.